But let's see how it goes today. Just going to say hello over on Discord. Let people know that I should be live. And welcoming you to the third live stream in 3 days. It's been a lot of fun this week, I think. Let's see if we get some people popping in. There you go. Hello. I should be multi-streaming again today, but if I click on the multi-stream chat box, it's showing me nothing. But on the regular YouTube chat box, I see you absolutely perfectly. So, hello to Teresa. Yeah, we're live, Miranda. And you were second, so not bad for you. And hello to Heats Bottles. Welcome. Nice to see a new name in the chat. And hello to Holly. Very nice to see you. And Tora Tiger has made it as well. Great stuff. Nice to see you. There you are. Yes, you're in, Miranda. And hello to Katie. Evening. And to Fear Ibby. Another new name, I think. If you've been in a book club before, let me know. Don't think I recall the name. Same with Milo. I wonder if you're new to the book club as well. Welcome, Milo. Nice to see you. And yeah, 3 in a row, Laurie. How about that? Welcome to the stream. We've had fairly regular book clubs at some time in the past. This Christmas, we had a few, didn't we, in a row? I can't remember exactly how I panned that out, but we stacked them up pretty rapidly for a Christmas Carol. And back in the glory days of the Red Fox Book Club, when I was starting off, we had them regularly, but not really in this kind of daily format. It was more like a regular weekly thing, wasn't it? Oh, and here's... how do I pronounce your name? I always feel like the simplest man alive when I see names like yours. I mean, I know JB, Joyce, works for you absolutely fine. But I'm sure I'm dyslexic sometimes. Like, when it comes to names that I'm not familiar with, I'm just like, how do I even start this? And then, when I'm narrating audiobooks, if there's things that I'm unfamiliar with, I just go and look them up. But in live situations like this, I'm just kind of like, Orinia. I just don't, my brain just is quite slow, I think, when it comes to stuff like that. It's a real flaw. Orinia. And welcome to Jake, a new big fan. Very nice to see you, Jake. Good stuff. Are you out trucking today? If so, I hope it's all going smooth, not too crazy on the roads. Old everywhere else. Good stuff. Aura, yeah? Aura works, right? Orinia. It's like my best bet. It's my best guess. Strange that why is only the Facebook chat showing on screen? I've just noticed that. Let me refresh this again. Probably going to regret it. But I just noticed that only the Facebook chat was coming up on the video there. It's just showing... Is it just showing you Facebook, guys? Super weird. That's a bit sad if that's true. Let's see. Oh, no. Well, it's showing... Is it showing both now? Strange though. I did the same as I always do. Just refreshed the chat box, but it was only showing the Facebook guys. So, I see that you're in YouTube and Facebook simultaneously, JB. Pretty cool. No, but I try spelling things out phonetically, Tora, believe me. But then sometimes, if a name isn't an English name, a British name, an American name, whatever, then our phonetics are not always going to apply either. I mean, even sometimes with British English, you can try and spell something out phonetically and it doesn't help you because of all sorts of weird exceptions and things. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it can work. Sometimes it's not going to help you at all. So, I do my best. But English is a confusing language at the best of times, I think. So, fair play to all of you non-native English speakers out there. Whether you only know how to say hi and thanks, but you make the effort to do it, or whether you're pretty much fluent, good on you. Honestly, I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm certainly not gifted with foreign languages. I do my best with English. My grades at school would tell you that I'm pretty proficient, but sometimes I doubt it. And who else is popping in? We've got Janice as well. Hello there. Nice to see you coming in from Facebook. Still weird though. Like on my streaming software, on the multi-stream view, I only see the Facebook guys. So I'm on the YouTube view so that I can see the majority of the chatters. But if I miss some things going on in the Facebook chat, my apologies. That is why. And hello to Romac. Nice to see you again. You're doing good at the moment. Coming into these streams pretty regular. And hello there to Jiu Tang as well. Cool. Very nice. All the way from Hong Kong. Absolutely awesome. Yeah, exactly. There's so many weird exceptions. Like as soon as you get outside of the English language, which, like I said, can be complicated and often a false friend. But once you get outside of there, then good luck to you. Yeah, my Swedish is limited too. Honestly, Joyce, very limited. I understand quite a bit, but like I've said, I think my pronunciation apparently is pretty good, but conversationally, pretty awful. Like if I know the context of a conversation, I can generally follow along pretty well and order food and drink in a restaurant or a cafe or something like that, and make a little bit of chit chat. And I can read Swedish okay, and I can write sort of okay, but just in like an everyday conversation, I'm quickly just getting all sorts of awkward and out of my depth. So yeah, I've not seen Shannon popping in yet. Don't know what's going on there, Tora. She'll be here, I'm sure. Hi there, not me. Sorry about that. Just awkward timing. I actually thought, you know what? I bet not me's having a friend around this afternoon. I'll see if I can coordinate my live stream with when their friend comes over, and then they'll be caught in this awkward situation. Like, you know, do I watch the stream, or do I hang out with my friend, or maybe do we just put the stream on in the background? And I don't really know what to do. But nice to see you. And hello to Lynette, aka Miss Bookworm. Lovely to see you. I was a little bit disappointed that you didn't pop in yesterday, I must say. I felt a little bit let down, but never mind. And hello to Ms. Leonite. As I was saying, I struggle, but you know, in Sweden, the level of English spoken here is absolutely incredible, and sometimes it's actually quite hard to get Swedes to speak Swedish if they're speaking with a non-Swede, because they just know that it's easier to speak English. You know, they learn English from a pretty young age and are surrounded by English with English spoken films and TV and music basically since they pop out of the womb. So English attainment is very good in Sweden, and a lot of people really enjoy having an opportunity to speak English as well, or an extra opportunity to play around with English and things. It's a very popular language here. So when I first moved, and even before I first moved here, I was really going in relatively hard, like to try and learn as much as I can and make a good impression and things. And then working in English speaking environments, like working in English speaking schools. A lot of your colleagues are British, American, Australian. you get a little bit in a bubble. You know, you get in like a little English speaking bubble, and then it's easy to get a little bit lazy as well. Like I said, when so many people are speaking fantastic English all around you, and if you're spending your time doing other things, then learning Swedish might not be top of your priorities always, even if it could be very, very valuable and just a good thing to do. And then when I've moved back home a couple of times, when I've moved away from Sweden a couple of times for quite long periods, then it just seems to make it harder every time when I move back to Sweden to really get engaged. But we'll see how it goes. Hey, you all, Jake. Nice to see you, like I said. Who else is popping in? Oh, Alethea. Nice to see you again. Great stuff. Always enjoy it when you let me know where you're coming in from as well. I just get the globe is like instantly in front of me, and I just see all these places. It's absolutely fantastic. West Virginia. Gosh, the mountains of West Virginia. It sounds like Tolkien's dream. Beautiful stuff. Cool stuff. Oh, and Mighty Microbes here as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Very nice to see you. And hello to Michael as well. Good stuff. I wonder if this is the first time you've been in the book club chat as well. Thanks for saying hi. And yeah, you're very welcome. I've said so many times how much I've enjoyed producing that second book of The Fellowship of the Ring. It's been absolutely amazing. So thanks for sharing that with me. It's been really, really, really cool. I surely do, Joyce. I tell Maria those words many, 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 many times a day. Don't worry about that. And it's generally reciprocated, you know, if I've been well behaved. Good question, Lynette. Good question. I've just left it blank up on the top of the screen there. You're asking what are we reading today. I just wanted to leave it to you guys. That stream on Tuesday, I decided that I was going to start with If Only They Could Talk. Then we had some witches. And then yesterday I started with To Marry a Prince. And then we went back to If Only They Could Talk. And I had hoped to squeeze in some witches as well, but it didn't just happen. So I just wanted to put it up to you guys. So we can have chapter 3 of If Only They Could Talk by James Herriot. We can have, I think it would be chapter 3 of The Witches, but, you know, I would probably read 2 or 3 chapters of The Witches by Roald Dahl. I keep showing you these covers. It just makes it easier and it looks kind of nice. But I am eager to have a little go at one of these 2 at some point. It's always fun to try new things, and I'm a big fan of George Orwell's writing. 1984, An Animal Farm. And we've got this beautiful illustrated book here, Pride and Prejudice, which I have started a couple of times in the past, but I've never read from this illustrated version, which is lovely. And I do have a couple of other things on my bookshelf as well. We had a chapter of To Marry a Prince, like I said yesterday. I'm planning on reading another chapter tomorrow, so probably won't have Prince today, but it's scheduled in for tomorrow, so we don't need to worry about that. And I absolutely loved that last chapter. I thought it was a great read. Hope you enjoyed it too. And I was just really pleased with how that live reading went as well. I hadn't read the chapter, so I was just reading it off the cuff, as we say. And I thought it went pretty smooth. I thought the characterization came out quite well. Not many mistakes or stumbles and things. And it was just a nicely written chapter as well, I think, from Sophie Page there. So, yeah, really hope you enjoyed Prince yesterday. Is that something you're studying at the moment? Not me. Some biochemistry. Sounds very, very light. Just an easy read for a Thursday afternoon. But on a serious note, though, I really have been considering trying to like, look into, at the very least, whether people would be interested in me narrating some non-fiction, whether it's textbooks like university textbooks, course literature. So I mean that would be, it could be fiction, of course, but I've had a couple of friends mention that perhaps it could be a good idea to look into that, whether universities, for example, would be interested in me producing an audiobook of certain course literature, maybe key course literature that isn't currently out there, just to make things a little bit easier for students, and especially when there's so much online learning these days, it could be a useful tool for people. So it is something I'd like to look into. I just keep forgetting about it, to be honest. I've not really looked into it, and I'm not sure exactly where to start either. And there's always all the complexities with copyright and everything as well. So I'm sure it would be a little bit trickier to do it properly than perhaps it first sounds. But course literature and non-fiction and things like that could be interesting to look into, maybe helping some students out there. I mean, I already have a lot of children and students that come onto my channel, because perhaps when I had The Hobbit on my channel in the past, The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings or The Chronicles of Narnia are one of their select readings at school or whatever. So they come to try and get ahead of the game, make their life a little easier. Let me just have a little skim through the chat again. Ah, that's cool, not me. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's really nice. I hope it helps her a little bit, That's really nice. Oh, and hello to Mama Fox. I thought I saw a few of you welcoming Mama Fox. Good stuff. Ah, strange. You didn't get a notification, Lynette. That's frustrating. Can never trust it. Oh, I didn't realise that, Tora. I'm glad this helps. I really am. Yeah, that's what I've heard, Joyce. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic there. It always absolutely blows me away when I come across people that are, pretty much fluent in English as their second or third language. I think it's absolutely incredible. I really don't take that for granted at all. I think it's absolutely amazing. I always just feel so privileged to be able to chat to people so comfortably when I'm living outside of my native country. I think it's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Ah, right. I didn't know that, Tori. You've got trapped up north, up in Teesside. Gosh, I've got a couple of friends from up that way, actually. Good stuff. Tuesday. Tuesday. So we've got a couple of votes coming in as well. So Holly's shouting Prince at me. Like I said, I probably will save that for tomorrow. I just like to mix things up a little bit. So I think it's kind of nice if we have like a day on, a day off, that kind of thing. Lynette says 1984. I think it would be cool to start it. I've been sort of itching to start it for a long time. It's just fun for me as well to try narrating different things. I totally know what you're saying though, Romac, when you're saying James Herriot's lovely for escapism. It's so relaxing. It's so relaxing. Mama Fox was wondering if 1984 might be a little bit heavy. And I guess it just depends how you look at it, really. Some people enjoy these sorts of heavier subjects, even if things in their life are a little tricky as well. It's sort of distracting and immersive in a different way. I often enjoy that kind of thing. I like highly engaging literature and TV shows. Just skimming through the chat, but I would love to get reading soon. I've already been live for 20 minutes, but it's really nice just to catch up with you all and say hello, see what's going on. So Jake's voting for something new. Could be in the 1984 box, for example. Oh, and hiya, Logan. Really nice to see you. You didn't manage to make it yesterday, I don't think, do you? You've been having a tough time at work and various things at the moment, so it's really cool that you've managed to make it today. Yeah, very true on that one, Ms. Leonite, with the different voices in Animal Farm. There's all the different animals, of course. With it being a live reading, it always just depends how much I want to go for the voice changes and characterization. I mean, I always give a little bit of something, but yeah, it's different to a regular recorded version, of course, because then I know that I can get things just the way I want them. I hate being inconsistent. I really, really do. So if I'm reading live and I hear that this second or third time I'm doing the voice of a particular character, it's not really quite how I had it the first time or something, it really irritates me, that, because when I'm recording things generally, as you know, if you've listened to quite a lot of my stuff, I'm very meticulous with trying to make sure these characters are as consistent as possible. Pretty much, Jake, and welcome, Jake's Great Adventures. Nice to see you in the chat. Yeah, it was Bored to Sleep was a 10,000 subscriber special I did on my very first Stephen Garnett channel a couple of years ago. We haven't got back to 10,000 subscribers yet on this channel. We got up to 13,000 on my first channel before that was closed, and then 13,000 on Red Fox Voice before that was closed, and now we're back up to about 8,000 on this channel. But yeah, I was just testing some of your theories that you would happily listen to anything I read. Anything, you told me. Anything. You could read the dictionary or an instruction manual or a phone book. So I read from the Oxford Dictionary, and I read an old SLR camera instruction manual book to you for a little 10,000 subscribers special. Yeah, you can still listen to that on my $5 Google Drive folder, actually, for patrons of mine through Patreon. Good times. Oh, and hi to Ada. I was just checking whether we'd got any new Fox fans popping in. Yeah, that was cool, that, Tora, the live stream chess. I really enjoyed it. I only did it the one time when I was just getting warmed up into the reading and the live streams, September of last year, after that break in the summer. It was really, really nice, that, and thanks so much for having a game with me as well. It was really cool. It was really cool, and Miranda as well. It was really, really nice, that. And I've got a friend in Stockholm who's a French dude. He's been studying here and working here, and he's actually a professional chess player, chess coach. We met playing in a chess tournament a few years ago, and he watched that stream and he really, really enjoyed it. He thought it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I should give that a bash again. It was cool. That was cool. Do throw those recommendations out there. What would you like to hear me read today? What would you like to hear me read? I've been mentioning a bunch of things, so please give me your opinion in the chat. So we've got a vote for Witches or Animal Farm. Oh gosh, not surprised at all, Lynette, though. I would be picking up probably a quarter of the local languages, never mind 1.5, so I think you're doing pretty well there. You can't send me those little sad pleading faces, Teresa. We will at least have one Prince chapter tomorrow. I won't say more than that. They do take, they're always about 40-45 minutes, so it's a lot of work bashing out those chapters live. But we'll have at least one, and who knows, there might be a second. Who knows? But if we keep these streams up next week, there'll be another chapter coming at the start of next week as well. So we can actually make some pretty good progress with Prince. Ha, good times, Tora. It seems to knock you silly, the cheerleading. It's a dangerous hobby by the sounds of it. Yeah, Logan snuck in a little while ago. He did. Huh. Yeah, I know. I'm really curious to see how people would cope with 1984 as well. If it's a little bit too close to reality these days. No, it's really not. I think we'd be being a little bit dramatic there. But I think it's a fantastic book, of course. Someone was mentioning if I could read a couple of Orwell's contemporaries or predecessors, that have written similar sort of themed books. And I mentioned a Swedish one that I have on my bookshelf as well, Kalle Kane, which was written about 15 years, maybe 18 years before 1984. And I am tempted to do that, but I just think, 1984, it's an absolute classic, and I do generally want to read relatively famous books if I can on the stream. It's not always so simple. I can't always just read whatever I want, unfortunately, but I think the more people that at least know of a story, the better. But sometimes it's nice to have those little surprises out there. Indeed. Rest in peace to those old channels. And yeah, absolutely, Teresa. Complicated stuff. Hi there, Juz. I hope I haven't missed anybody else popping into the chat. I'm trying to keep up with it all. But hey there, Juz. At least you've only half an hour to go. You'll survive. You'll make it. Keep on trucking. You should have just got an email through Patreon as well, Juz. Just quickly welcoming and thanking you for joining Patreon yesterday. But I owe you access to one of the Google Drive folders and a proper little welcome message. So, Juz, Connor, Holly, and a couple of others I'll be writing to again later this evening and making sure that you get into the audio libraries for joining me on Patreon. So thank you to you guys. Very true, Teresa. Very true. So we've got we've got another vote for Harriet. We've got a vote for witches. And hello there, Miranda. Have you only just popped in? No, you were there, right? You were second, weren't you? You've just been laying low, I think. Harriet Dahl Orwell. Yep. All right. I'm getting the message. Could be useful, Tora Tiger. Having particularly mobile joints. It sounds useful when you're doing gymnastics and agility-based things. Even if your joints are popping out. Teresa votes Pride and Prejudice. Nice. Oh yeah, there's hard scenes in 1984 for sure. But there is a vote for 1984. All right. Yeah. Good question, Lynette. Would people enjoy some horror? Like I've never narrated horror or crime or suspense, those sorts of things. A lot of the stuff I do is fantasy, of course. and then various other little bits and pieces. And I've enjoyed a little bit of sci-fi when I've touched upon it a couple of times, with Ender's Game and the official audiobook for sleepers, for example. But yeah, horror could be cool, and it is something that people have mentioned a couple of times, and it's definitely something that's quite popular, and even a little bit lighter, scary stuff, kind of like ghost stories and things like that. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think some people would really enjoy it. I think so. Uh, bum, 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 bum. Another vote for Animal Farm. Interesting. Oh, hey, Katie Bug. Yeah, I think I did miss that. So another vote for Witches. So yeah, I think I'm going to start with a few chapters of Witches. And then we'll take it from there. So let's have 2 or 3 chapters of The Witches. And then I'll see. Maybe a chapter of If Only They Could Talk, some James Herriot. And then we'll just see how things are going. Whether I maybe have the first chapter of Animal Farm. Something like that. Maybe swap around the order of James Herriot and Orwell. I'm not sure. But let's start with a couple of easy chapters of The Witches, because like I said, I did sort of want to try and squeeze in some of The Witches yesterday, and it didn't quite happen. But we did have a long-awaited chapter of To Marry a Prince, and we did have the second chapter of If Only They Could Talk as well. So, yeah, some votes for horror, and a vote for 1984 from Logan. Interesting. I think it's neck and neck between 1984 and Animal Farm, actually. For some reason, I'm slightly leaning towards 1984, even though I'm a big fan of Animal Farm. Oh, yeah, okay, fair point, Jake's Great Adventures. Yeah, okay, yeah, I've read 2 of the Sherlock Holmes short stories. Yeah, it's crime. I just, like, in my head, I just kind of put that into classics, which just seems to smudge everything together. But absolutely, yeah, it is. It is crime. It's just, I suppose it's just not crime in the sense that I'm thinking, but you know, modern crime is often a little different to something like that with Conan Doyle. But yeah, absolutely. Stephen King, yeah, they are often very, very lengthy books, probably copyrighted. But I would really enjoy reading Stephen King. I've read quite a few of his books back in the day. Oh, has he done some short stories? I didn't realise that. It doesn't surprise me, though. Yeah. Huh, that's interesting, Lynette. Yeah, I wouldn't describe Animal Farm as animal cruelty, if that's what you're talking about, Teresa. You know, the sort of anthropomorphic animals. You know, there's a lot of metaphor there. So yeah, I wouldn't have animal cruelty as a theme. Certainly not. Yeah. I'm not missing the witches' votes. I'm not missing the witches' votes, Lynette. Absolutely not. Like I said, I'm going to start with the witches. So definitely got the memo there. Yeah, exactly. It's animal on animal, but I just wouldn't describe, like, that's not a theme that I think of with Animal Farm. It's yeah, I don't know. It's quite deep. Okay, but let's get started. We've got a nice little bunch of you here, so I want to make the most of it. And that was a very long intro, but it's just nice to have a little bit of a mingle. You honestly can't beat good old-fashioned paper books. I love a good PDF. It's great reading on the computer screen or on the phone screen or whatever, but you can't beat a bit of paper. But you could say that about so many things, Teresa. I mean, what about scabbers? Like there's some pretty dark scenes in Harry Potter. I mean, if you think about it, and like a lot of children's stories, like I said, animals, the animals of Farthing Wood, and you could say like Watership Down, and many things like animals getting hurt is part of the story, but they're like there's so many morals and life lessons in there. You can basically see it as human situations. You can just see it as the dangers of everyday life and things like that. It's not like someone actively harming an animal for some sick pleasure. Could help, Miss Leonite. Oh, Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, quite a lot of people have mentioned that old chap, Joyce. Yeah, could be good. Ah, yeah. I wasn't aware of that, Logan, but that's pretty cool. All right. Oh, and hi there to Wolf as well. Just before I get started, nice to see you jumping in. Good stuff. Still no Shannon though. And where she is. If anybody's still on Discord, if you've got it in the background, you can see what she's up to. She's nearly always here. Very strange. Suspicious. Alright, so let's jump back in to Roald Dahl's The Witches. I was just refreshing with chapter 2 and grandmother's stories. Are they to be believed? Are witches really real? I guess we will have to find out. Oh, that reminds me, Wolf. Let me update my little text box before I get started. That was a inadvertent reminder. Or maybe it was a more tactical reminder than I'm giving you credit, Wolf. So... they don't have chapter names, but I'm not sure how many I'm going to read, but technically it's chapters 3 and 4 at the very least, so... got a little bit of space. Alright. Enough procrastination now. Let's get started. Yeah, The Witches, we started it on Tuesday. Yeah, cheers, Wolf. Cheers. Thank you, Miss Leonite. Appreciate it. Alright. And if you're not familiar with Animal Farm, just chuck it in Google. I don't want to plug Google too much, but, chuck it in the search engine. And read the synopsis. You'll get the idea. It's an absolute classic. Quite political, you would say. Alright, so here we go at last. At long last. Thank you for your patience, boys and girls. Settle down now, please. Settle down. Let's be quiet in the classroom. No more messing around there at the back, thank you. How to recognize a witch. The next evening, after my grandmother had given me my bath, she took me once again into the living room for another story. "Tonight," the old woman said, "I am going to tell you how to recognize a witch when you see one." "Can you always be sure?" I asked. "No," she said, "you can't, and that's the trouble. But you can make a pretty good guess." She was dropping cigar ash all over her lap, and I hoped she wasn't going to catch on fire before she told me how to recognize a witch. "In the first place," she said, "a real witch is certain always to be wearing gloves when you meet her." "Surely not always," I said. "What about in the summer when it's hot?" "Even in the summer," my grandmother said. "She has to. Do you want to know why?" "Why?" I said. "Because she doesn't have fingernails. Instead of fingernails, she has thin, curvy claws like a cat, and she wears the gloves to hide them. Mind you, lots of very respectable women wear gloves, especially in winter, so this doesn't help you very much." "Mamma used to wear gloves," I said. "Not in the house," my grandmother said. "Witches wear gloves even in the house. They only take them off when they go to bed." "How do you know all this, Grandmamma?" "Don't interrupt," she said. "Just take it all in. The second thing to remember is that a real witch is always bald." "Bald?" I said. "Bald as a boiled egg," my grandmother said. I was shocked. There was something indecent about a bald woman. "Why are they bald, Grandmamma?" "Don't ask me why," she snapped. "But you can take it from me that not a single hair grows on a witch's head." "How horrid!" "Disgusting," my grandmother said. "If she's bald, she'll be easy to spot," I said. "Not at all," my grandmother said. "A real witch always wears a wig to hide her baldness. She wears a first-class wig. And it is almost impossible to tell a really first-class wig from ordinary hair unless you give it a pull to see if it comes off." "Then that's what I'll have to do," I said. "Don't be foolish," my grandmother said. "You can't go round pulling at the hair of every lady you meet, even if she is wearing gloves. Just you try it and see what happens." "So that doesn't help much either," I said. "None of these things is any good on its own," my grandmother said. "It's only when you put them all together they begin to make a little sense. Mind you," my grandmother went on, "these wigs do cause a rather serious problem for witches." "What problem, Grandmamma?" "They make the scalp itch most terribly," she said. "You see, when an actress wears a wig, or if you or I were to wear a wig, we would be putting it on over our own hair. But a witch has to put it straight onto her naked scalp. And the underneath of a wig is always very rough and scratchy. It sets up a frightful itch on the bald skin. It causes nasty sores on the head. Wig rash, the witches call it. And it doesn't half itch. What other things must I look for to recognise a witch? I asked. Look for the nose holes, my grandmother said. Witches have slightly larger nose holes than ordinary people. The rim of each nose hole is pink and curvy, like the rim of a certain kind of seashell. Why do they have such big nose holes? I asked. For smelling with, my grandmother said. A real witch has the most amazing powers of smell. She can actually smell out a child who is standing on the other side of the street on a pitch-black night. She couldn't smell me, I said. I've just had a bath. Oh, yes, she could, my grandmother said. The cleaner you happen to be, the more smelly you are to a witch. That can't be true, I said. An absolutely clean child gives off the most ghastly stench to a witch, my grandmother said. The dirtier you are, the less you smell. But that doesn't make sense, Grandmama. Oh, yes, it does, my grandmother said. It isn't the dirt the witch is smelling. It is you. The smell that drives a witch mad actually comes right out of your own skin. It comes oozing out of your skin in waves, and these waves, stink waves, the witches call them, go floating through the air and hit the witch right smack in her nostrils. They send her reeling. Now, wait a minute, Grandmama. Don't interrupt, she said. The point is this. When you haven't washed for a week and your skin is all covered over with dirt, then quite obviously the stink waves cannot come oozing out nearly so strongly. I shall never have a bath again, I said. Just don't have one too often, my grandmother said. Once a month is quite enough for a sensible child. It was at moments like these that I loved my grandmother more than ever. Grandmama, I said, if it's a dark night, how can a witch smell the difference between a child and a grown-up? Because grown-ups don't give out stink waves, she said. Only children do that. But I don't really give out stink waves, do I? I said. I'm not giving them out at this very moment, am I? Not to me you aren't, my grandmother said. To me you are smelling like raspberries and cream. But to a witch, you would be smelling absolutely disgusting. What would I be smelling of? I asked. Dog's droppings, my grandmother said. I reeled. I was stunned. Dog's droppings? I cried. I am not smelling of dog's droppings. I don't believe it. I won't believe it. What's more, my grandmother said, speaking with a touch of relish, to a witch you'd be smelling of fresh dog's droppings. That simply is not true, I cried. I know I am not smelling of dog's droppings. stale or fresh?" "There's no point in arguing about it," my grandmother said. "It's a fact of life." I was outraged. I simply couldn't bring myself to believe what my grandmother was telling me. "So, if you see a woman holding her nose as she passes you in the street," she went on, "that woman could easily be a witch." I decided to change the subject. "Tell me what else to look for in a witch," I said. "The eyes," my grandmother said. "Look carefully at the eyes, because the eyes of a real witch are different from yours and mine. Look in the middle of each eye where there is normally a little black dot. If she is a witch, the black dot will keep changing colour, and you will see fire, and you will see ice, dancing right in the very centre of the coloured dot. It will send shivers running all over your skin." My grandmother leaned back in her chair and sucked away contentedly at her foul black cigar. I squatted on the floor, staring up at her, fascinated. She was not smiling. She looked deadly serious. "There's grandmother in the chair with the black cigar." "Are there other things?" I asked her. "Of course there are other things," my grandmother said. "You don't seem to understand that witches are not actually women at all. They look like women, they talk like women, and they are able to act like women. But in actual fact, they are totally different animals. They are demons in human shape. That is why they have claws and bald heads and queer noses and peculiar eyes, all of which they have to conceal as best they can from the rest of the world." "What else is different about them, Grandmamma?" "The feet," she said. "Witches never have toes." "No toes?" I cried. "Then what do they have?" "They just have feet," my grandmother said. "The feet have square ends with no toes on them at all." "Does that make it difficult to walk?" I asked. "Not at all," my grandmother said. "But it does give them a problem with their shoes. All ladies like to wear small, rather pointed shoes, but a witch, whose feet are very wide and square at the ends, has the most awful job squeezing her feet into those neat little pointed shoes." "Why doesn't she wear wide, comfy shoes with square ends?" I asked. "She dare not," my grandmother said. "Just as she hides her baldness with a wig, she must also hide her ugly witch's feet by squeezing them into pretty shoes." "Isn't that terribly uncomfortable?" I said. "Extremely uncomfortable," my grandmother said. "But she has to put up with it." "If she's wearing ordinary shoes, it won't help me to recognize her, will it, Grandmamma?" "I'm afraid it won't," my grandmother said. "You might possibly see her limping very slightly, but only if you were watching closely." "Are those the only differences then, Grandmamma?" "There's one more," my grandmother said. "Just one more." What is it, Grandmamma? Their spit is blue. Blue? I cried. Not blue. Their spit can't be blue. Blue as a bilberry, she said. You don't mean it, Grandmamma. Nobody can have blue spit. Witches can, she said. Is it like ink? I asked. Exactly, she said. They even use it to write with. They use those old-fashioned pens that have nibs, and they simply lick the nib. Can you notice the blue spit, Grandmamma? If a witch was talking to me, would I be able to notice it? Only if you looked carefully, my grandmother said. If you looked very carefully, you would see probably a slight bluish tinge on her teeth, but it doesn't show much. Here's the witch and the pen. Very handy if you happen to run out of pen, paper or ink. Just need to have some paper handy. It would if she spat, I said. Witches never spit, my grandmother said. They daren't. I couldn't believe my grandmother would be lying to me. She went to church every morning of the week, and she said grace before every meal. And somebody who did that would never tell lies. I was beginning to believe every word she spoke. So there you are, my grandmother said. That's about all I can tell you. None of it is very helpful. You can still never be absolutely sure whether a woman is a witch or not just by looking at her. But if she is wearing the gloves, if she has the large nose holes, the queer eyes, and the hair that looks as though it might be a wig, and if she has a bluish tinge on her teeth, if she has all of these things, then you run like mad. Grandmamma, I said, when you were a little girl, did you ever meet a witch? Once, my grandmother said. Only once. What happened? I'm not going to tell you, she said. It would frighten you out of your skin and give you bad dreams. Please tell me, I begged. No, she said. Certain things are too horrible to talk about. Does it have something to do with your missing thumb? I asked. Suddenly, her old wrinkled lips shut tight as a pair of tongs, and the hand that held the cigar, which had no thumb on it, began to quiver very slightly. I waited. She didn't look at me. She didn't speak. All of a sudden, she had shut herself off completely. The conversation was finished. Good night, Grandmamma, I said, rising from the floor and kissing her on the cheek. She didn't move. I crept out of the room and went to my bedroom. What happened to that poor old grandmamma? I wonder if we'll find out. So that was chapter 3. How to recognize a witch. Shall we move on to chapter 4, Fox fans? Hope we're enjoying this fun little story. I know it's sort of a children's book, but I think it's still a lovely read, and hopefully it's very nice to listen to. Just a nice little distraction, a nice little bit of company. How are we doing before I start chapter 4? Ah, hi, Anki Anka. Nice to see you. I didn't realise you'd popped in. I don't think I said hello to you earlier, at least. Oh, and I was just seeing there was a comment through Facebook earlier as well from Lang, saying that she'd really enjoyed my Harry Potter readings back in the day. That's very nice. I'm still only seeing YouTube on my chat box here, so anybody watching through Facebook, sorry, like I said earlier as well, I'm sorry if I'm missing you in the chat. Yeah, I agree, to be honest, Wolf. Like, with so many children's books, I really feel that they are books for anyone. You know, it just depends how you approach them, really. Interesting. Shannon must be busy today. Hope she's doing alright. I hope the video didn't freeze for you, but it can do that sometimes. Unfortunately, I've noticed that a few times when watching back the recorded stream, even if it looks smooth for me at the time, and maybe it's smooth for someone and not smooth for somebody else, and sometimes it can save little jumps and things in the stream. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things with live connections. Happens sometimes. Oh wow, is that true, Anki Anka? I've never heard of that before. Never heard of that before. Really? Okay. I've always been under the impression, because I've used PayPal a lot over the last few years, a lot. And I didn't think they took any percentages at all. Like, with certain transactions, there might be a 5% fee and things like that. Like, it's very low. Like, the revenue for me through Patreon, for example, about 10%. I think it can be maximum about 15% to do with processing fees. Patreon takes a very small cut, and then there's like things on PayPal's end, but it's very small. Like, in comparison to Twitch, I think they take 50%. I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. And YouTube, it's ages since I've looked at these things. I've got it written on my Patreon page when I was researching this back in the day, but I think YouTube takes 55%, something like that. But I think if you use my PayPal link, like if you wanted to donate to me through either the sgarner88@gmail.com email it.com Gmail it, yeah. That email address that's linked to PayPal, or if you use the money pool link, there shouldn't be a charge. Or if there is, I thought it was like I said, a very small percentage. That's strange. Which link have you been looking at, Anki Anka? Sounds very odd. Try the sgarner88 one. Yeah, exactly, Wolf. Like, Wolf's saying 7%. Yeah, I thought it was like between 5 and 10 at the absolute most. Sometimes it's to do with how much money you're wanting to transfer as well. And they generally have pretty good currency conversion rates and things like that. So it's strange to hear that. You're saying the one linked in the description. That's so strange. But try the other one that's in the description if you like, Anki. I'm really sorry to mess you around, and thank you so much for trying to do that. But there should be a link to a money pool, and then there should also be a link that's just one of my email addresses, sgarnett88@gmail.com, and you can donate directly to that as well. But thank you so much for trying to fix that, and I'm sorry you're having a problem. Like I said, I've never come across that before, and a lot of people have, donated over these last couple of years, and I've never heard that before, so that's strange. Oh yeah, but that's true, Teresa, saying that Shannon will definitely catch up after the stream if she can't make it. Of course. All right, but I'll press on with chapter 4. I'm really glad you seem to be enjoying it. And have a think what you would like to listen to next. At the moment, I'm torn between chapter 3 of If Only They Could Talk, James Herriot, and starting one of the George Orwells just for fun, either 1984 or Animal Farm. So you can leave it in the chat for me now. Have a think about it. Which would you like to hear next? James Herriot or George Orwell? Yeah, I see you, Anki. That's really, really, really strange. Are you trying the other link as well? The sgarnett@gmail. Don't know if it would be different. But yeah, that does seem unusually steep. I don't know if it's to do with that particular currency. Don't know. Really, really don't know. But please do keep those suggestions coming. I'm just seeing Jake's Great Adventures, chucking in Animal Farm, and Lynette's Feeling Flexible. Maybe she's been learning from Tora. Okay. Chapter 4 of Roald Dahl's The Witches. The Grand High Witch. The next day, a man in a black suit arrived at the house carrying a briefcase, and he held a long conversation with my grandmother in the living room. I was not allowed in while he was there, but when at last he went away, my grandmother came in to me, walking very slowly and looking very sad. "That man was reading me your father's will," she said. "What is a will?" I asked her. "It is something you write before you die," she said, "and in it you say who is going to have your money and your property. But most important of all, it says who is going to look after your child if both the mother and father are dead." A fearful panic took hold of me. "It did say you, Grandmama," I cried. "I don't have to go to somebody else, do I?" "No," she said. "Your father would never have done that. He has asked me to take care of you for as long as I live, but he has also asked that I take you back to your own house in England. He wants us to stay there." "But why?" I said. "Why can't we stay here in Norway? I would hate to live anywhere else. You told me you would." "I know," she said, But there are a lot of complications with money and with the house that you wouldn't understand. Also, it said in the will that although all your family is Norwegian, you were born in England and you have started your education there. And he wants you to continue going to English schools. Oh, Grandmama, I cried. You don't want to go and live in our English house. I know you don't. Of course I don't, she said. But I am afraid I must. The will said that your mother felt the same way about it, and it is important to respect the wishes of the parents. There was no way out of it. We had to go to England, and my grandmother started making arrangements at once. Your next school term begins in a few days, she said, so we don't have any time to waste. On the evening before we left for England, my grandmother got on to her favourite subject once again. There are not as many witches in England as there are in Norway, she said. I'm sure I won't meet one, I said. I sincerely hope you won't, she said, because those English witches are probably the most vicious in the whole world. As she sat there smoking her foul cigar and talking away, I kept looking at the hand with the missing thumb. I couldn't help it. I was fascinated by it, and I kept wondering what awful thing had happened that time when she had met a witch. It must have been something absolutely appalling and gruesome, otherwise she would have told me about it. Maybe the thumb had been twisted off. Or perhaps she had been forced to jam her thumb down the spout of a boiling kettle until it was steamed away. Or did someone pull it out of her hand like a tooth? I couldn't help trying to guess. Tell me what those English witches do, Grandmama, I said. Well, she said, sucking away at her stinking cigar, their favourite ruse is to mix up a powder that will turn a child into some creature or other that all grown-ups hate. What sort of a creature, Grandmama? Often it's a slug, she said. A slug is one of their favourites. Then the grown-ups step on the slug and squish it without knowing it's a child. That's perfectly beastly, I cried. Or it might be a flea, my grandmother said. They might turn you into a flea, and without realising what she was doing, your own mother would get out the flea powder, and then it's goodbye you. You're making me nervous, Grandmama. I don't think I want to go back to England. I've known English witches, she went on, who have turned children into pheasants, and then sneaked the pheasants up into the woods the very day before the pheasant shooting season opened. Ouch, I said. So they get shot? Of course they get shot, she said. And then they get plucked and roasted and eaten for supper. I pictured myself as a pheasant flying frantically over the men with the guns, swerving and dipping as the guns exploded below me. Yes, my grandmother said. It gives the English witches great pleasure to stand back and watch the grown-ups doing away with their own children. I really don't want to go to England, Grandmama. Of course you don't, she said. Nor do I. But I'm afraid we've got to. Are witches different in every country? I asked. Completely different, my grandmother said. But I don't know much about the other countries. Don't you even know about America? I asked. Not really, she answered, although I have heard it said that over there the witches are able to make the grown-ups eat their own children. Never, I cried. Oh no, Grandmama, that couldn't be true. I don't know whether it's true or not, she said. It's only a rumour I've heard. Slug? Roasted pheasant. Poor, poor children. But how could they possibly make them eat their own children? I asked. By turning them into hot dogs, she said. That wouldn't be too difficult for a clever witch. Does every single country in the world have its witches? I asked. Wherever you find people, you find witches, my grandmother said. There is a secret society of witches in every country. And do they all know one another, Grandmamma? They do not, she said. A witch only knows the witches in her own country. She is strictly forbidden to communicate with any foreign witches. But an English witch, for example, will know all the other witches in England. They are all friends. They ring each other up. They swap deadly recipes. Goodness knows what else they talk about. I hate to think. I sat on the floor, watching my grandmother. She put her cigar stub in the ashtray and folded her hands across her stomach. Once a year, she went on, the witches of each separate country hold their own secret meeting. They all get together in one place to receive a lecture from the Grand High Witch of all the world. From who? I cried. She is the ruler of them all, my grandmother said. She is all-powerful. She is without mercy. All other witches are petrified of her. They see her only once a year at their annual meeting. She goes there to whip up excitement and enthusiasm and to give orders. The Grand High Witch travels from country to country attending these annual meetings. Where do they have these meetings, Grandmamma? There are all sorts of rumours, my grandmother answered. I have heard it said that they just book into a hotel like any other group of women are holding a meeting. I have also heard it said that some very peculiar things go on in the hotels they stay in. It is rumoured that the beds are never slept in, that there are burn marks on the bedroom carpets, that toads are discovered in the bathtubs, and that down in the kitchen the cook once found a baby crocodile swimming in his saucepan of soup. Just like that. Is that a child turned into a crocodile? Ready for eating? My grandmother picked up her cigar and took another puff, inhaling the foul smoke deeply into her lungs. Where does the Grand High Witch live when she's at home? I asked. Nobody knows, my grandmother said. If we knew that, then she could be rooted out and destroyed. Witchophiles all over the world have spent their lives trying to discover the secret headquarters of the Grand High Witch. What is a witchophile, Grandmama? A person who studies witches and knows a lot about them, my grandmother said. Are you a witchophile, Grandmama? I am a retired witchophile, she said. I am too old to be active any longer. But when I was younger, I travelled all over the globe trying to track down the Grand High Witch. I never came even close to succeeding. Is she rich? I asked. She's rolling, my grandmother said. Simply rolling in money. Rumour has it that there is a machine in her headquarters which is exactly like the machine the government uses to print the banknotes you and I use. After all, banknotes are only bits of paper with special designs and pictures on them. Anyone can make them who has the right machine and the right paper. My guess is that the Grand High Witch makes all the money she wants and she dishes it out to witches everywhere. What about foreign money? I asked. Those machines can make Chinese money if you want them to, my grandmother said. It's only a question of pressing the right button. But, Grandmama, I said, if nobody has ever seen the Grand High Witch, how can you be so sure she exists? My grandmother gave me a long and very severe look. Nobody has ever seen the devil, she said, but we know he exists. The next morning, we sailed for England, and soon I was back in the old family house in Kent, but this time with only my grandmother to look after me. Then the Easter term began, and every weekday I went to school, and everything seemed to have come back to normal again. Now, at the bottom of our garden, there was an enormous conker tree, and high up in its branches, Timmy, my best friend, and I had started to build a magnificent tree house. We were able to work on it only at the weekends, but we were getting along fine. We had begun with the floor, which was built by laying wide planks between two quite far apart branches and nailing them down. Within a month, we had finished the floor. Then we constructed a wooden railing around the floor that left only the roof to be built. The roof was the difficult bit. One Saturday afternoon, when Timmy was in bed with flu, I decided to make a start on the roof all by myself. It was lovely being high up there in that conker tree, all alone with the pale young leaves coming out everywhere around me. It was like being in a big green cave, and the height made it extra exciting. My grandmother had told me that if I fell, I would break a leg, and every time I looked down, I got a tingle along my spine. I worked away, nailing the first plank on the roof. Then suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of a woman standing immediately below me. She was looking up at me and smiling in the most peculiar way. When most people smile, their lips go out sideways. This woman's lips went upwards and downwards, showing all her front teeth and gums. The gums were like raw meat. It is always a shock to discover that you are being watched when you think you are alone. And what was this strange woman doing in our garden, anyway? I noticed that she was wearing a small black hat and she had black gloves on her hands, and the gloves came nearly up to her elbows. Gloves. She was wearing gloves. I froze all over. "I have a present for you," she said, still staring at me, still smiling, still showing her teeth and gums. I didn't answer. "Come down out of that tree, little boy," she said, "and I shall give you the most exciting present you've ever had." Her voice had a curious rasping quality. It made a sort of metallic sound, as though her throat was full of drawing pins. Here's the tree house under construction. Without taking her eyes from my face, she very slowly put one of those gloved hands into her purse and drew out a small green snake. She held it up for me to see. "It's tame," she said. The snake began to coil itself around her forearm. It was brilliant green. "If you come down here, I shall give him to you," she said. "Oh, Grandmama," I thought, "come and help me." Then I panicked. I dropped the hammer and shot up that enormous tree like a monkey. I didn't stop until I was as high as I could possibly go, and there I stayed, quivering with fear. I couldn't see the woman now. There were layers and layers of leaves between her and me. I stayed up there for hours, and I kept very still. It began to grow dark. At last, I heard my grandmother calling my name. "I'm up here," I shouted back. "Come down at once," she called out. "It's past your supper time." "Grandmama," I shouted, "has that woman gone?" "What woman?" my grandmother called back. "The woman in the black gloves." There was silence from below. It was the silence of somebody who was too stunned to speak. "Grandmama," I shouted again, "has she gone?" "Yes," my grandmother answered at last. "She's gone. I'm here, my darling. I'll look after you. You can come down now." I climbed down. I was trembling. My grandmother enfolded me in her arms. "I've seen a witch," I said. "Come inside," she said. "You'll be all right with me." She led me into the house and gave me a cup of hot cocoa with lots of sugar in it. "Tell me everything," she said. I told her. By the time I had finished, it was my grandmother who was trembling. Her face was ashy grey, and I saw her glance down at that hand of hers that didn't have a thumb. You know what this means, she said. It means that there is one of them in our district. From now on, I'm not letting you walk alone to school. Do you think she could be after me specially? I asked. No, she said. I doubt that. One child is as good as any other to those creatures. It is hardly surprising that after that I became a very witch-conscious little boy. If I happened to be alone on the road and saw a woman approaching who was wearing gloves, I would quickly skip across to the other side. And as the weather remained pretty cold during the whole of that month, nearly everybody was wearing gloves. Curiously enough, though, I never saw the woman with the green snake again. That was my first witch, but it wasn't my last. Here's the poor little boy in the tree. And the suspected witch with the snake. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you for listening, Fox fans. That was chapter 4 of Roald Dahl's The Witches. Really hope you enjoyed it, everybody. It's a fun little book. Not the most politically correct of children's books, but a lovely one nonetheless. Ugh. And how are we all doing? How are we all doing in the chat? I saw that Shannon has finally decided to make it to the Red Fox Book Club. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Very nice to see you, Shannon. I did, Shannon. I was chatting to you a little bit on Discord earlier at some ridiculous hour over there in America. So I'm not surprised you ended up having to get a nap if that's where you've been. And Mango's here too. Lovely to see you, Mango. Great to see you in the chat as well. I saw Teffy dropping in. I don't think I'd said hello to you before I went back to the reading. Very nice to see you, Teffy. I'm not sure if anybody else has popped in, but I hope we enjoyed those 2 chapters of The Witches. It's a lot of fun to read. It really is. Sorry for just 1 or 2 little errors here and there. Sometimes it's easy to get just a little bit distracted by things and you can just lose your place for a second. Yeah, it's true, Anki. Like, I've never really had a great chair setup, actually. There was the famous squeaky chair back in one of my former apartments when I was first starting the Red Fox Book Club, when I didn't have the webcam or the video or anything. It was just my voice and something to entertain you a little bit on the screen, whether it was the chat or the book I was reading or whatever. The squeaky chair was just a regular kitchen chair. And then I've moved between beds, sofas, other regular chairs, but I've never had a proper sort of office chair or gaming chair or something. Never really had a good spot for it, to be honest. But we'll see. I should probably try and invest in something, but I'm just not really sure where to keep it. I've sort of got a space in the hallway here where I do all my main recording these days, but it's not a cozy spot at all, especially for a live stream. It's not particularly cozy. As here on the sofa, it's like relatively comfortable, and I think the backdrop is quite pleasant here. So, um, but yeah, I'll look into it. But I can get a little bit stiff if I'm sat here too long. Yeah, squeaky chair, good times, Ada, good times. Yeah, good idea, Lynette. Honestly, I've never really considered an autobiography or a biography or whatever. It's not something I ever really read in my own time, actually, but it's a nice idea. Are there anybody's biographies or autobiographies that you're particularly interested in? I don't think anyone's ever suggested that before. I think that could be a new idea. Yeah, I think you're right, Mango. Probably would help in a number of ways. And thanks for the praise, those of you that were saying that you've been enjoying the reading today. That's really nice. It's really nice. I was just having a little flick through the chat. Some nice dog chat. And me taking the blame, as usual. Oh, and NG popped in as well and said hello. Good stuff. Good stuff. What else have I been missing? Not too much. Thanks, Tora. Yeah, I feel pleasant enough. Don't worry, Anki. I'm okay. I should probably just have a quick leg stretch, though, and maybe just grab a cup of coffee. I've got one made in the pot, so it's not a big job or anything. So I can just disappear for 2 seconds and just stretch the legs and just get a little bit of refreshment, and then we can have another reading. I think the last one for today, especially if it's James Herriot or Orwell, because those chapters will be relatively lengthy. But yeah, I'll just grab a coffee, stretch the legs, burpees. Yeah, alright, so I hope we're doing alright, everybody. It's really nice to see you all in the chat. We've had a nice crowd again today. Real good stuff. Hitler? How's he got mentioned? What have I missed there? Oh. Okay, you're talking about Mein Kampf, I think, Lynette. There must be a few other recommendations out there. Oh, here we go, Wolf. Alexander Hamilton or George Washington. Robert Oppenheimer. Okay. All right, interesting suggestions. What are burpees? Mama Fox has been joking a lot of times over the years that I should start a fitness channel, so then I could show you what burpees are. But currently, I'm going to go get a coffee. I'll be back in 2 minutes. If anybody's asking, I won't be long at all. Oh, I'm not sure. A proper biography of J.R. Tolkien. I'm not sure. I've not come across it, but there certainly could be. Like I said, I could definitely read the foreword to Lord of the Rings at some point for a little bit of background info on his writing, and you get like a little bit of his sort of like personal background in there as well. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. All right, back soon. And I mean soon, like literally just a couple of minutes. Hello, hello, hello. What's all this going on here? What's all this nonsense? Causing trouble as always. How are we doing? Oh, just ignore me then. Hello. How have we been doing in the chat? You seem to have been keeping yourselves amused. Oh, Gandhi. Good suggestion, Alethea. Thanks for that. Have you Googled burpees yet, Mango? It'll be an absolute revelation. Stream tomorrow. Yeah, that's the plan. I would absolutely love to keep it rolling. So probably not Saturday and Sunday, but tomorrow. Yeah, that's the plan, Jake. Oh, you mentioned Silmarillion. Yeah, that's one that's often requested. I'll definitely get through the Lord of the Rings first, and then I'll decide where I go from there. If everything's been going well, I've not had any problems or whatever. So it would either be a remake of The Hobbit or certain extracts from the Silmarillion, or maybe a couple of the stories from the. Do they call them appendix? I think he refers to them as the appendix, or appendices or whatever. So there's the story of Aragorn and Arwen, for example. So one of those is where I would go after the Lord of the Rings. Well spotted, Lynette. Yeah, so Prince tomorrow and something else yet to be decided. I mean, obviously, I could always just decide what I'm going to read every day, but I just think it's so nice for you lot to get involved and be able to influence what we read and what we listen to on the Foxy Foxy Book Club. Mama Fox was recommending Dirk Bogarde. Yeah, you've mentioned that old chap quite a few times. Yeah, I don't even know where to start with biographies, I must admit. But what do you guys think? Do you think that would be an interesting thing to listen to? I guess it depends on how much you're interested in that particular person. But perhaps, as with some stories, it can always just be a nice bit of background reading, and you might even discover something that you didn't even know that you were interested in, or sort of discover a new person that you didn't know so much about. So it could be interesting. Just skimming through the chat, and then we'll get back into the reading. I think we'll have the last reading of today. Katie was listening out for me getting the drink. Yeah, I just muted the microphone, actually. Sorry you didn't get the behind the scenes there. But yeah, I forgot about that, actually. When I was in my... Oh, I was going to say my old apartment. It's like, which one? But yeah, when I was in the original Foxy Foxy Book Club apartment, my whole apartment was only about 20 square meters, so if I left the mic running, yeah, you could hear the kitchen tap running. Thank you for the welcome back. Appreciate it. Yes, no coffee for the class, I'm afraid. Katie, the coffee is for professors only. So you just settle down there, please. Try and concentrate. It's rather important, as it is always. It's always very important. Alright, I'm just about caught up with the chat. What should we have for the third reading? Oh, and hello to Olivia. I think I saw you pop in actually whilst I was reading. Very nice to see you as always. Oh, a short history of nearly everything. Yeah, I've got that actually. That was, I think, did I mention that maybe on a live stream once? I'm not sure. We'd have to ask Shannon, the Walking Red Fox Book Club Encyclopedia, whether I've mentioned that on a past stream. But I have considered it. I was a little bit concerned about copyright. I'm not gonna lie. It's often a concern, but yeah, I do have that book kicking about somewhere. It's not on the bookshelf though, so it's lost with If Only They Could Talk and a few other books that I've got here somewhere. Because you will get too hyperactive, Wolf. No sweets, sugar, or coffee in the classroom. You know the rules, Wolf. I'll pretend I didn't hear that, Shannon, that you brought your own coffee. I'll ignore that this time. But what shall we go for? James Herriot, If Only They Could Talk, Chapter 3. One of the two George Orwell's 1984 or Animal Farm. I don't know if I should give you too many options. It could get chaotic. But I will say option 3, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Like I've said, I have started that in the past, both on live stream and in a recorded form. So it might be the third time you've heard me begin it, but I would have to begin it again because I'm broken like that. I think I would, anyway. So, they're your options. Please vote now, those of you that are in the stream. You get the privilege of being able to mould the stream before our very eyes. Yeah, I thought I had mentioned it, Olivia. What house are you in again, Olivia? I may be willing to give you a single house point for that answer. So, we've got one vote for Pride and Prejudice so far. What's next? I just saw Katie's message. I was like, was it Shannon? Yeah, I was like, what's Shannon referring to? And then you're there with eats a cheese stick and drinks apple juice. The perfect student. The Last Lecture. I don't know that one, Jutang. But thanks for the rec. I don't know if anybody else knows that one. Is it actually what you're eating? That's fantastic. Yeah, that's a nice idea, actually, Mama Fox. Like, we've had some Arnold Schwarzenegger reading before. Technically had a bit of sort of Sean Bean reading. And then we've had the special Thank Yous Patrons Day thingy-majiggy where, like, we had the whole Hagrid and McGonagall and Snape and Lupin and a lot of the other crew Miss Trelawney, Professor Trelawney, and some of the students, and Dumbledore thanking the patrons and having that little discussion. But yeah, I could always do a reading in a character voice. I don't know if you'd get tired of it, but it could be fun. Could be fun. Oh, and hello to Elle as well. Nice to see you in the chat. Good stuff. Nice. You're voting for more witches. Yeah, I get that. It's nice to have a bit of consistency as well. But it's just fun to jump around for me a little bit. And also, like, if someone's not a massive fan of the witches and I only stream the witches for an entire stream, then it seems a bit of a shame that they're not going to get anything that's their cup of tea. So I like to just move around a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 different things in a stream. But I mean, it's not a bad idea. It's a perfectly reasonable idea. I mean, if everybody who is here is really, really wanting more witches, then I will let the power of the people decide that. I will happily read more witches if that's what the Fox fans want, Yeah, let me know. You can throw the witches in there. Why not? So, witches, James Herriot, one of the 2 George Orwells, or Pride and Prejudice. Still not had too many votes. There's been a couple of James Herriot votes, though, I think. And another Pride and Prejudice vote. Alright, let me... I need to try and count these up in a minute. Ooh, maybe somewhere in between, Olivia, it can happen. A Ravenclaw Slytherin hybrid. Then it would just be whichever house your heart desires. Just trying to keep track of the votes here. Oh, and hello to Rachel as well. Didn't notice you'd popped in. You've got the same colour on my screen as Mama Fox. I was thinking it was Mama Fox. So hello to Rachel. Nice to see you. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, Alice in Wonderland is one that we've read before, actually, and we've never finished it. We've started it twice. We got about... can't remember exactly now. About 8 chapters in the first time and about 10 chapters in the second time or something like that. So we're pretty far in. It's not a huge book, of course. So yeah, definitely must finish Alice in Wonderland at some point. I won't read it today. But it's a nice suggestion, certainly. Little mix of votes there. Mix of votes. I feel like James Herriot is just in the lead. Let me have a little count up. Give me a second. Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of Pride and Prejudice votes as well. Hmm. Quite a lot. It seems like I couldn't just exactly get how many votes there were for Pride and Prejudice and James Herriot because there's a few of you commenting a couple of times. So it would take too long to try and focus and just count exactly how many there are. So, but it looks, yeah, really tight between Pride and Prejudice and James Herriot. I just saw that Colour Brights has popped in and Beata's popped in as well. Very nice to see you. Yeah, I've been live for 2 hours. I just took a brief 5 minute break there, but it seems like you're not the only one that's not had a notification today for some reason. Very strange, but nice to see you. And you too, Beata. Good stuff. Don't worry about it, Jake. You can vote. Don't worry about that at all. We're all busy doing different things. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, there are certain integrations which allow you to do votes and things. Like I don't have one set up. I'm not sure if you can do it on YouTube. Probably you definitely can for Twitch. Integrate some kind of poll thing. I've messed around with the settings sometimes, just seeing what different things do. You know, back in the day when I was first setting up the streaming software and things like that. Yeah, I know it's annoying, that kind of thing. Color brands. Tales of Narnia. Is this? But that as in Chronicles of Narnia. You must know that I'm already on with that series. Surely, you know there's the whole of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe on my channel, where they're split up into 3 chapter parts, or you've got the whole complete audiobook with music as well. And Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that's also something I've started before as well. I do run into copyright problems, though, with certain books, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is one of them, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's a shame that, because it's one of my favourite books, and I've not read it for a lot of years as well. But there's a couple of chapters that I'd recorded as one of my experimental chapters when I was first trying things out a few years ago that you can listen to on the $5 Google Drive folder through Patreon. And then I've read the first 2 or 3 chapters live on Twitch as well. I think it was not last September, but the September before. So about 18 months ago. Absolutely fantastic story, though. A brilliant series by Douglas Adams. Absolutely wonderful. So yeah, like if I could just read anything I wanted and I never had to worry about things like that, you know, yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide would definitely be there. Yeah, now I'm really torn. I was hoping that there was going to be a clearer shout one way or another, you know. Trixie. That's very strange, Wolf. How dare YouTube unsubscribe you from me? That is blasphemy. Yeah, so now I'm really torn. I'm like, all right, do I do one more chapter of Witches before reading something else? Because there's a lot of you that do want me to continue with Witches as well, but it seems pretty tied between Witches, James Herriot, and Pride and Prejudice. So I feel like I need to make the decision myself. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I know you can do polls in the regular videos, but I'm not sure about the streams on YouTube. You can definitely do them for Twitch streams. But I've actually done some polls in YouTube videos, regular YouTube videos before. Like, I've had one running on my Lord of the Rings book 1, on Secret Garden, and on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, up in the cards, they're called, up in the top right hand corner, where you can suggest other videos and things as well. And I was just asking, which is your favourite book that you've heard me read? So I think Lord of the Rings was up there. Secret Garden was voted for a lot. Harry Potter was voted for a lot. But yeah, there's of course I've already been reading The Witches, Teresa, but this is the thing, it's like you can never please everybody. It's impossible. Like, some of you think it's nice to just have lots of one book, and then some people are like, oh, but we've already had that one, do a different one. So, you can't win. It's impossible. It really is. Okay, but I'll stick to my guns and say that we've had a couple of chapters of Witches, so we'll have a different book for different listeners. Toss a coin. Yeah, I've never resorted to that yet. But how about some Pride and Prejudice? Oh, and then Olivia goes and says, James Herriot, it's chaos. Chaos in the Fox Den. What do we do? Hello there, Black Belt. Dum-de-dum-dum-dum. Nice to see you dropping in. Yeah, I get you, Shannon. Now I'm seeing more clearly why you say just read what you want to read. But I like all these stories. Like, my heart has been pulling me towards 1984 for a long time, but I enjoy reading all of these books, of course. So, Hey there, Juz. No, never too late. Never too late. You just join when you want to. No, but you must be finished with work now, which is really, really cool. It is. It is, Mango. Absolute. It's like foxes amongst the chickens. Foxes in the hen house. Absolute chaos. But yeah, let's have a little bit of Pride and Prejudice. Yeah? And then if I've still got some energy, we'll have some more James Herriot. But if not, it's not likely. Because I do want to get out sometime today as well. If not, then we'll have James Herriot and To Marry a Prince tomorrow. How about that? And then we've sort of had a bit of an alternating vibe. I'm not sure who are the chickens. I think I'm the chicken at the moment. I feel like I'm all the chickens and you're the foxes. I feel like the tables have been turned. It's been absolute chaos. Ah, that's cool, Geotang. Alright, let's try this beast, this masterpiece of the literary canon. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. And for those of you that have heard me read this first chapter, or these first 4 chapters, a number of times, I deeply, deeply apologise from deep within my foxy soul. But for those of you that haven't heard me read these chapters before, then, well, I may also be apologising if you don't like it. But I guess that's more your problem than mine. But hopefully you really enjoy it. I mean, it's an absolute classic for good reason. And actually, there's an interesting little introduction in the beginning of this book as well, with some very nice photographs. Just giving a little bit of background history about the reception that this book received, and it was very mixed when it was originally published. And when this illustrated version was originally published in the 1800s, interestingly, the illustrator was in many ways more famous than the author at the time. So the original front cover of this illustrated version, which is here, it's not going to be particularly clear for you to see, unfortunately, but here actually gives the illustrator as much room on the front of the page as the author. So Hugh Thompson, that name was helping to put this book on the map. And then popularity slowly increased. Was quite popular during the Victorian period, so like the 1800s in the UK. But wasn't really until recent decades that this worldwide love and fame for Jane Austen's work really came about. So yeah, there's many hidden gems in history, and a lot of them, unfortunately, you could say are ladies as well, like famous ladies, whether authors or in other lines of work. Men have taken so much space and priority over history, unfortunately. So, obviously, a lot of famous authors were writing under aliases and pen names and what have you. Oh yeah, cheers, Shannon. Cheers, Shannon. I'd forget my head if it wasn't screwed on. How long have I had that now? Like, honestly, it's a disgrace. But technically, I wasn't reading anything, but I mean, I am here, after all. I mean, if it's Be Right Back, who are you listening to? Let's give it some inverted commas. I don't know which chapters we're having, so I'll just leave it open. Shout out to Sana joining the live stream as well. Hello, hello. A new name to many of you. Welcome to the stream. And yes, I am absolutely starting from the beginning, Mango. It's the only way to do it. It's the only way. All right. Oh, but that's nice, Lynette. Then we don't have as much chaos tomorrow, because it has been absolute chaos. But I like to involve you, you see. That's the thing. I don't want you just to feel like you're watching TV. It's an interactive experience. Yeah, exactly. That was what I was sort of getting at, Rachel, that she was writing anonymously. But I mean, that was the thing. I mean, a lot of female authors I don't think would have been given the time of day if they were openly female authors, unfortunately, because men took all the priorities. So it was the only way to do it sometimes. But let's go back to the beginning. And like I was saying, tomorrow, let's go for some more James Herriot, If Only They Could Talk, and some more to marry a prince. And if there's a little bonus reading of witches or something else, then all good. But we'll have those lined up for tomorrow. But today, here we are. I feel that I should read this in a rather posh English voice, as we are settling into Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. But that's not really my style. But I'm equally not going to read it in Broad Yorkshire. We're not going to have Yorkshire Pride and Prejudice, not today. We're not going to have any of that. We're not going to have tracky bottoms tucked in socks and 2-litre bottles of Strongbow. Not today. Going to keep it classy. Not that Yorkshire can't be classy, of course. There's some absolutely beautiful parts of Yorkshire. Maria?
Yeah.
Your sister's been in.
Yeah, I'm on the phone with her.
Troublemaking.
Yeah. We're planning a plot.
You wouldn't actually want me to read it in a posh English voice, would you? Though I'm not exactly a posh lad, but I still speak proper. What, you were getting ear tingles from the posh, Shannon? You've got issues. It is a lovely book cover. Very true, Anki. Good to know, Anki. Good to know. Yeah, I just don't think I could keep it up for the entire time. But if I was to do a posh English voice, which of my characters that you've heard me, or like character voices that you've heard me use from my various audiobooks, would I use? Would it be a sort of Gandalf, or a Snape, or Richard Attenborough's character from Jurassic Park? What's his name now? The owner of the park. Forget his name. But I've had various rather posh gentlemen here and there in various books. Who would it be? I mean, Gandalf is rather posh. Yeah, I mean, it's not okay. Posh is probably it's a silly term to use, really, but very well spoken. Elrond, yeah, Elrond, I guess would work. Yeah. Sometimes sounds like just on the edge of Snape without wandering into Snape. Less nasally than Snape, but sort of similar. John Hammond, thank you. But yeah, similar tones. But yeah, the John Hammond voice, I really enjoyed that, actually. This sort of like, well, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Ends up going a little bit Gandalfy, but I did use the John Hammond as a sort of basis for the new Gandalf voice that I started using in book 2 and at the end of book 1. Cheers, Shannon. Oh, sorry. Cheers, Sana. I was mixing up. But cheers to you, Shannon. Also, I can always say thanks for you keeping us company, gracing us with your fine company. No, I couldn't do that to myself. I don't think, like, trying to read Pride and Prejudice in a silly voice. And there's characters, you know, you can mess around with the different characters. Sorry, Shan. I didn't mean to shout you out then. My apologies. All right. I will just read as it comes naturally. I was going to ask you all another question, but then we're just going to be sat here all day long, aren't we? Because I was going to ask, I'm not asking you, but I was going to ask, Aragorn's a good suggestion. Aragorn I could get into, definitely. I was going to ask whether you prefer a sort of more soothing, calming, natural reading voice with not too much characterization, or whether you prefer more distinct characterization. So like a very clear Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, for example, and more distinctive voices for the daughters. You know, I'm definitely not asking that question, but I am asking that question. Yeah, Lupin. Aragorn and Lupin, we mentioned this on a stream, I think. There are similarities between those two as well. Like, they're real good guy characters. And on the outward appearance, anyway, are a similar age, even though Aragorn's technically much older. But the characters that we really, really warm to and feel comforted by. So I feel like they fit similar roles in some ways in those books. So I had Aragorn as sort of a bit of a tougher, rougher Lupin. But, you know, Lupin's a pretty tough chap himself within that universe. So I wouldn't mess. Okay. I'll just see what comes naturally. Would be kind of fun giving it some Aragorn characterization though. I think he's got a nice pleasant voice. I think Aragorn he'd be a nice narrator. He'd be a very pleasant TV host, I think. Just seems like a nice chap. Okay. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Chapter 1. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighbourhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters. "My dear Mr. Bennet," said his lady to him one day, "have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?" Mr. Bennet replied that he had not. "But it is," returned she, "for Mrs. Long has just been here, and she told me all about it." Mr. Bennet made no answer. "Do you want to know who has taken it?" cried his wife impatiently. "You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it." This was invitation enough. "Why, my dear, you must know. Mrs. Long says that Netherfield is taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England, that he came down on Monday in a chaise and four to see the place, and was so much delighted with it that he agreed with Mr. Morris immediately that he is to take possession before Michaelmas, and some of his servants are to be in the house by the end of next week." What is his name? Bingley. Is he married or single? Oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune. 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls. How so? How can it affect them? My dear Mr. Bennet, replied his wife, how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I am thinking of his marrying one of them. Is that his design in settling here? Design? Nonsense! How can you talk so? But it is very likely that he may fall in love with one of them, and therefore you must visit him as soon as he comes. I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may send them by themselves, which is perhaps will be still better, for as you are as handsome as any of them. Mr. Bingley may like you the best of the party. My dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I do not pretend to be anything extraordinary now. When a woman has 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give over thinking of her own beauty. In such cases, a woman has not often much beauty to think of. But, my dear, you must indeed go and see Mr. Bingley when he comes into the neighbourhood. It is more than I engage for, I assure you. But consider your daughters. Only think what an establishment it would be for one of them. Sir William and Lady Lucas are determined to go merely on that account, for in general, you know, they visit no newcomers. Indeed, you must go, for it will be impossible for us to visit him if you do not. You are over-scrupulous, surely. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to see you, and I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses of the girls, though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie. I desire you will do no such thing. Lizzie is not a bit better than the others, and I am sure she is not half so handsome as Jane, nor half so good-humoured as Lydia, but you are always giving her the preference. They have none of them much to recommend them, replied he. They are all silly and ignorant like other girls, but Lizzie has something more of quickness than her sisters. Mr. Bennet, how can you abuse your own children in such a way? You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion for my poor nerves. You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my old friends. I've heard you mention them with consideration these last 20 years at least. Ah, you do not know what I suffer. But I hope you will get over it, and live to see many young men of 4,000 a year come into the neighbourhood. It will be no use to us if 20 such come, since you will not visit them. Depend upon it, my dear, that when there are 20, I will visit them all. Mr. Bennet was so odd a mixture of quick parts, sarcastic humour, reserve and caprice, that the experience of 23 years had been insufficient to make his wife understand his character. Her mind was less difficult to develop. She was a woman of mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper. When she was discontented, she fancied herself nervous. The business of her life was to get her daughters married. Its solace was visiting and news. A quick glimpse at the introductory illustration there. The Peacock of Pride. And Mr. and Mrs. Bennet sort of relaxing in their sitting room. Chapter 2. Mr. Bennet was among the earliest of those who waited on Mr. Bingley. He had always intended to visit him, though to the last always assuring his wife that he should not go. Until the evening after the visit was paid, she had no knowledge of it. It was then disclosed in the following manner. Observing his second daughter employed in trimming a hat, he suddenly addressed her with, "I hope Mr. Bingley will like it, Lizzie." "We are not in a way to know what Mr. Bingley likes," said her mother resentfully, "since we are not to visit." "But you forget, mamma," said Elizabeth, that we shall meet him at the assemblies, and that Mrs. Long promised to introduce him." "I do not believe Mrs. Long will do any such thing. She has 2 nieces of her own. She is a selfish, hypocritical woman, and I have no opinion of her." "Nor more have I," said Mr. Bennet, "and I am glad to find that you do not depend on her serving you." Mrs. Bennet deigned not to make any reply, but, unable to contain herself, began scolding one of her daughters. "Don't keep coughing so, Kitty, for heaven's sake. Have a little compassion on my nerves. You tear them to pieces." "Kitty has no discretion on her coughs," said father. "She times them ill." "I do not cough for my own amusement," replied Kitty fretfully. "When is your next ball to be, Lizzie?" "Tomorrow fortnight." "Ay, so it is," cried her mother, "and Mrs. Long does not come back till the day before, so it will be impossible for her to introduce him, for she will not know him herself." "Then, my dear, you may have the advantage of your friend, and introduce Mr. Bingley to her." "Impossible, Mr. Bennet, impossible, when I am not acquainted with him myself. How can you be so teasing?" "I honour your circumspection. A fortnight's acquaintance is certainly very little. One cannot know what a man really is by the end of a fortnight. But if we do not venture, somebody else will, and after all, Mrs. Long and her daughters must stand their chance, and therefore, as she will think it an act of kindness if you decline the office, I will take it on myself." The girls stared at their father. Mrs. Bennet said only, "Nonsense, nonsense." "What can be the meaning of that emphatic exclamation?" cried he. "Do you consider the forms of introduction and the stress that is laid on them as nonsense? I cannot quite agree with you there. What say you, Mary? For you are a young lady of deep reflection, I know, and read great books and make extracts." Mary wished to say something sensible, but knew not how. "While Mary is adjusting her ideas," he continued, "let us return to Mr. Bingley." "I am sick of Mr. Bingley," cried his wife. "I am sorry to hear that. But why did you not tell me that before? If I had known as much this morning, I certainly would not have called on him. It is very unlucky. But as I have actually paid the visit, we cannot escape the acquaintance now." The astonishment of the ladies was just what he wished. That of Mrs. Bennet perhaps surpassing the rest, though when the first tumult of joy was over, she began to declare that it was what she had expected all the while. "How good it was in you, my dear Mr. Bennet. But I knew I should persuade you at last. I was sure you loved your girls too well to neglect such an acquaintance. Well, how pleased I am. And it is such a good joke, too, that you should have gone this morning and never said a word about it till now. Now, Kitty, you may cough as much as you choose, said Mr. Bennet, and, as he spoke, he left the room, fatigued with the raptures of his wife. What an excellent father you have, girls, said she, when the door was shut. I do not know how you will ever make him amends for his kindness, or me either, for that matter. At our time of life it is not so pleasant, I can tell you, to be making new acquaintances every day. But for your sakes we would do anything. Lydia, my love, though you are the youngest, I dare say Mr. Bingley will dance with you at the next ball. Oh, said Lydia stoutly, I am not afraid, for though I am the youngest, I'm the tallest. The rest of the evening was spent in conjecturing how soon he would return Mr. Bennet's visit, and determining when they should ask him to dinner. Here's the family gathered in the sitting room. I'm sorry my webcam isn't clearer, but you get the idea. They're lovely illustrations. And I'm just removing the dust cover. And there's also this little one here as well, of three of the daughters. I saw you mentioning the faces. That's mainly for your entertainment, but I do certainly get into character even when I'm doing my regular recordings. Certainly depends on the scene, but I don't think my face will ever be just neutral. I enjoy it too much, and especially those audiobooks that I produce where I do go into full characterization, then yeah, it's probably going to get pretty dramatic out in my hallway there. But yeah, I guess I vamp it up just a little bit for the live stream reading. You see, if you could record it all in one smooth take, Shannon, that would be a lovely behind the scenes for sure. But obviously, as you know, when producing these audiobooks, sometimes you might do 10 or 15 takes of one particular sentence, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4 attempts at a certain paragraph and things like that. So it would probably be a little bit messier than it sounds, but oh yeah, cheers, Anke. It's always good fun. So sorry for any little mistakes and stumbles and things. It's always inevitable when you're reading live and you're trying to quickly change between characters and keep the right rhythm. And obviously this is quite old English as well, written in the 1700s. So it's very easy to make little mistakes here and there. I mean, if I read slower and really took my time and skimmed ahead a little bit more, there'd be a couple less mistakes. But I try and sort of keep the energy of the chapter and build the mood of whatever I'm reading. So if it's sort of an energetic scene, it's easier to make a little stumble. And when you're reading from the book like this, I mean, I barely ever make notes on my PDFs when I'm reading from the computer. You know, I just see which characters are coming, and and shift between the voices and everything. But when you're reading from the book, this is very little print as well. Can you see? So it's quite hard sometimes to see which character's coming next. So I'm trying to just skim ahead as quickly as I can and see if it's obvious whether it's replied his wife, or if it's a said Mr. Bingley, or if it's one of the girls. And sometimes when you get this sort of back-to-back dialogue with no names or assistants, sometimes you can just lose track a little bit with who's going to speak next and things like that. But yeah, thanks. I know you don't mind too much, but it's just a little disclaimer, just so you know. I'm very aware of it. If you listen to my regular recordings, it's obviously very clean and edited and all the rest of it. But thanks very much. I see a couple of people are heading off. Thanks so much for Alethea. Lovely for you to join. Really, really, really nice. Are you heading off too, Wolf, or were you just saying bye-bye to Alethea? Oh, and Anki Anka's heading off as well. Oh, it's lovely to have your company. Really, really, really nice. Oh, and that's very kind. If you would like to help support me a little bit, obviously I massively appreciate that. I mean, Patreon's probably not a bad way to go. You can check it out, but it's just up to you whether you want something to be like a recurring support with extra access to bits and pieces, or if it's a one-off thing. It's totally up to you, and always not expected, but massively, massively appreciated. All right, I will continue. I'm also aware of trying not to block the camera too much. So, like, if I have the book like right up to my face, then it won't be the best viewing. So I'm just trying to balance those things, stay in a good position for the microphone and for the camera and for the book. Chapter 3. Not all that Mrs. Bennet, however, with the assistance of her 5 daughters, could ask on the subject was sufficient to draw from her husband any satisfactory description of Mr. Bingley. They attacked him in various ways, with barefaced questions, ingenious suppositions, and distant surmises, but he eluded the skill of them all, and they were at last obliged to accept the second-hand intelligence of their neighbour, Lady Lucas. Her report was highly favourable. Sir William had been delighted with him. He was quite young, wonderfully handsome, extremely agreeable, and to crown the whole, he meant to be at the next assembly with a large party. Nothing could be more delightful. To be fond of dancing with a certain step towards falling in love, and very lively hopes of Mr. Bingley's heart were entertained. "If I can but see one of my daughters happily settled at Netherfield," said Mrs. Bennet to her husband, "and all the others equally well married, I shall have nothing to wish for." In a few days Mr. Bingley returned Mr. Bennet's visit, and sat about 10 minutes with him in his library. He had entertained hopes of being admitted to a sight of the young ladies, of whose beauty he had heard much, but he saw only the father. The ladies were somewhat more fortunate, for they had the advantage of ascertaining from an upper window that he wore a blue coat and rode a black horse. An invitation to dinner was soon afterwards dispatched, and already had Mrs. Bennet planned the courses that were to do credit to her housekeeping, when an answer arrived which deferred it all. Mr. Bingley was obliged to be in town the following day, and consequently unable to accept the honour of their invitation, etc. Mrs. Bennet was quite disconcerted. She could not imagine what business he could have in town so soon after his arrival in Hertfordshire, and she began to fear that he might be always flying about from one place to another, and never settled at Netherfield as he ought to be. Lady Lucas quieted her fears a little by starting the idea of his being gone to London only to get a large party for the ball. And a report soon followed that Mr. Bingley was to bring 12 ladies and 7 gentlemen with him to the assembly. The girls grieved over such a number of ladies, but were comforted the day before the ball by hearing that instead of 12, he brought only 6 with him from London, his 5 sisters and a cousin. And when the party entered the assembly room, it consisted of only 5 altogether: Mr. Bingley, his 2 sisters, the husband of the eldest, and another young man. Mr. Bingley was good-looking and gentlemanlike. He had a pleasant countenance and easy, unaffected manners. His sisters were fine women, with an air of decided fashion. His brother-in-law, Mr. Hurst, merely looked the gentleman, but his friend, Mr. Darcy, soon drew the attention of the room by his fine, tall person, handsome features, noble mien, and the report which was in general circulation within 5 minutes after his entrance of his having 10,000 a year. The gentleman pronounced him to be a fine figure of a man. The ladies declared he was much handsomer than Mr. Bingley, and he was looked at with great admiration for about half the evening, till his manners gave a disgust which turned the tide of his popularity, for he was discovered to be proud, to be above his company, and above being pleased, and not all his large estate in Derbyshire could then save him from having a most forbidding, disagreeable countenance, and being unworthy to be compared with his friend. Mr. Bingley had soon made himself acquainted with the principal people in the room. He was lively and unreserved, danced every dance, was angry that the ball closed so early, and talked of giving one himself at Netherfield. Such amiable qualities must speak for themselves. What a contrast between him and his friend! Mr. Darcy danced only once with Mrs. Hurst, and once with Miss Bingley, declined being introduced to any other lady, and spent the rest of the evening in walking about the room, speaking occasionally to one of his own party. His character was decided. He was the proudest, most disagreeable man in the world, and everybody hoped that he would never come there again. Amongst the most violent against him was Mrs. Bennet, whose dislike of his general behaviour was sharpened into particular resentment by his having slighted one of her daughters. Elizabeth Bennet had been obliged, by the scarcity of gentlemen, to sit down for 2 dances, and during part of that time Mr. Darcy had been standing near enough for her to hear a conversation between him and Mr. Bingley, who came from the dance for a few minutes to press his friend to join in. "Come, Darcy," said he, "I must have you dance. I hate to see you standing about by yourself in this stupid manner. You had much better dance." "I certainly shall not. You know how I detest it, unless I am particularly acquainted with my partner. At such an assembly as this it would be unsupportable. Your sisters are engaged, and there is not another woman in the room whom it would not be punishment to me to stand up with." "I would not be so fastidious as you are," cried Mr. Bingley, "for a kingdom. Upon my honour, I never met with so many pleasant girls in my life as I have this evening, and there are several of them you are uncommonly pretty." "You are dancing with the only handsome girl in the room," said Mr. Darcy, looking at the eldest Miss Bennet. "Oh, she is the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. But there is one of her sisters sitting down just behind you who is very pretty, and I dare say very agreeable. Do let me ask my partner to introduce you." "Which do you mean?" And turning round, he looked for a moment at Elizabeth, till catching her eye, he withdrew his own and coldly said, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. I'm in no humour at present to give consequence to young ladies who are slighted by other men. You had better return to your partner, enjoy her smiles, for you are wasting your time with me." Mr. Bingley followed his advice. Mr. Darcy walked off, and Elizabeth remained with no very cordial feelings towards him. She told the story, however, with great spirit among her friends, for she had a lively, playful disposition, which delighted in anything ridiculous. The evening altogether passed off pleasantly to the whole family. Mrs. Bennet had seen her eldest daughter much admired by the Netherfield party. Mr. Bingley had danced with her twice, and she had been distinguished by her sisters. Jane was as much gratified by this as her mother could be, though in a quieter way. Elizabeth felt Jane's pleasure. Mary had heard herself mentioned to Miss Bingley as the most accomplished girl in the neighbourhood, and Catherine and Lydia had been fortunate enough never to be without partners, which was all that they had yet learnt to care for at a ball. They returned, therefore, in good spirits to Longbourn, the village where they lived, and of which they were the principal inhabitants. They found Mr. Bennet still up. With a book he was regardless of time, and on the present occasion he had a good deal of curiosity as to the event of an evening which had raised such splendid expectations. He had rather hoped that his wife's view on the stranger would be disappointed, but he soon found out that he had a different story to hear. "Oh, my dear Mr. Bennet," as she entered the room, "we have had a most delightful evening, a most excellent ball. I wish you had been there. Jane was so admired, nothing could be like it. Everybody said how well she looked, and Mr. Bingley thought her quite beautiful and danced with her twice. Only think of that, my dear. He actually danced with her twice, and she was the only creature in the room that he asked a second time. First of all, he asked Miss Lucas. I was so vexed to see him stand up with her, but however, he did not admire her at all. Indeed, nobody can, you know, and he seemed quite struck with Jane as she was going down the dance. So he inquired who she was, and got introduced, and asked her for the next two. Then the 2/3 he danced with Miss King, and the 2/4 with Miss Maria Lucas, and the 2/5 with Jane again, and the 2/6 with Lizzie, and the Boulanger. If he had had any compassion for me," cried her husband impatiently, "he would not have danced half so much. For God's sake, say no more of his partners. That he had sprained his ankle in the first dance. Oh, my dear, I am quite delighted with him. He is so excessively handsome, and his sisters are charming women. I never in my life saw anything more elegant than their dresses. I dare say the lace upon Mrs. Hurst's gown—" Here she was interrupted again. Mr. Bennet protested against any description of her finery. She was therefore obliged to seek another branch of the subject, and related, with much bitterness of spirit and some exaggeration, the shocking rudeness of Mr. Darcy. "But I can assure you," she added, "that Lizzie does not lose much by not suiting his fancy, for he is a most disagreeable, horrid man, not at all worth pleasing. So high and so conceited that there was no enduring him. He walked here and he walked there, fancying himself so very great. Not handsome enough to dance with. I wish you had been there, my dear, to have given him one of your set-downs. I quite detest the man." There we have the end of chapter 3. And Elizabeth sat within earshot of the tall, handsome, proud Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley. Hope you've been enjoying this, Fox fans. I think it's a lot of fun. How are we all doing in the chat? I will be wrapping things up to today with that third chapter of Pride and Prejudice. But if you've enjoyed it, I will absolutely do my best to continue. So tomorrow I've got To Marry a Prince chapter 12 lined up, and probably chapter 3 of James Herriot's If Only They Could Talk. If I've got the energy for another reading, then perhaps I'll put that one up to the vote, just for a little bit less chaos, but still allowing you to get involved. So we could have some more witches, we could have some more Pride and Prejudice, or see how we feel. Lots of drama, Olivia, lots and lots of drama. Oh, poor Mrs. Bennet and her nerves. Mr. Bennet, how could you be so teasing? I am absolutely vexed. Oh, that's nice to hear, Laurie. It's like that, though, sometimes, isn't it? I'm glad you're enjoying it as well, Mango, and Wolf, and Miss Bookworm, Lynette, and Shannon, obviously. Yeah, absolutely, Katie. Thank you, Colour. Yeah, it's like that, though, I think, sometimes, you know. To be fair, I mean, not wholly, but I've said this a couple of times, or along these lines anyway, but Dracula I thought would be a good book, but it sucked me in so much more than I expected. And it's like that sometimes, you know, you've got a certain idea about a certain story, particularly these very, very famous ones that you've heard of so much, like Pride and Prejudice, and some of you might be surprised to hear or not, that Harry Potter is one of those things too. Lord of the Rings, you know, people have heard so much about them from other people. They might have seen bits of a film, they might have skimmed a book, or they might have read a bit of a book years ago when they were in a particular mood or a certain time of their life or whatever, or they just get sick of hearing how popular something is and they don't think it's going to be something they enjoy. And then maybe you take a break from something, time passes, or something's just introduced to you in a different way, whether it's me narrating it. So for me, actually engaging with a book in a different way, if I'm engaging in it to narrate, it's very different to when I've been engaging with books just to read for pleasure to myself in the past. Or whether it's having it read to you, or whether it's seeing a different presentation, or it's just your mood on that particular day, or whatever. Suddenly you can be like, gosh, hang on a second, this is a really great book, or a fantastic TV series, or a really good film, or actor, or artist, or whatever it is. Yeah, absolutely, Miss Bookworm, absolutely. You really get that, I think, sometimes. No, believe me, it's not just you, Mango. It's one of those, like, you think everybody's read it, but it's like that with Harry Potter as well, when I had all the Harry Potter chapters and all the rest of it up on my old channels, a comment that I used to get quite often was, honestly, never been into Harry Potter. Maybe their girlfriend, boyfriend, some partner or whatever is a big fan, or they've just seen bits of it here and there a million times because you can't avoid it. And then for whatever reason, there are various reasons, they'd started listening to one of mine and then have become a big Harry Potter fan. It's just really cool. And I think such a compliment to me when I read those kind of things, whether it's somebody listening and engaging with a story for the first time, or whether they're an old fan of a book, they've heard various different versions, or read the book 20 times and they're now listening to mine, or whether they didn't think that they liked something and now they're enjoying mine. It's all such a huge compliment to me. It really, really, really means a lot to read those things, whichever particular angle it is, Yeah, I understand that, Miranda. Dracula is certainly a challenging one if English isn't your native language, even if you're a very strong English speaker like yourself. So I'm not surprised that sometimes you get a bit lost. I think even a lot of native English speakers would struggle. There's often words that I look up to double check that I'm getting the meanings right. Some words I don't think I've ever come across actually here and there. And then you get a few Hungarian words and a few other unusual place names and things like that dotted about. And I know I've made a couple of mistakes there, to say the least, with pronunciations. Even if I've meant to look things up, I still make mistakes, or just can't find a good pronunciation guide for certain words, and then sometimes you're just getting into a good flow and you forget to check something, it happens. Yeah, and then there's always that angle as well, Shannon. You're just a fan and you want to absorb everything there is, and then obviously if you're a fan of my stuff and you're a fan of the source material, then it's a match made in heaven, you would hope. I'll keep going, Wolf. Are you talking about The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings? A lot of people refer to The Lord of the Rings as The Hobbit, but it can get a bit confusing. Midsummer Night's Dream. That could be a nice one for sure, Shannon. Foxy Book Club. It's been really nice having you all here today. I've really, really, really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. We've had a really nice gang in today. It's been great. It's been really nice. Good times, Katie. Good times. I really don't think that's going to help as much as the teacher would hope it would. I think you're much better to kind of read broadly, probably have quite in-depth conversations face to face. Do your own research that's sort of relevant rather than just reading dictionary definitions. We all learn differently, but I think you're going to struggle to soak information up in that way. Oh yeah, you do mean Hobbit, yeah. Yeah, I'll think about the horror stories for sure. If anybody's got any recommendations in the horror genre, please do leave me a comment in the regular video comments. Don't leave it here because it'll get lost, especially when we're signing off in a minute. But yeah, do leave me a regular comment. Send me an email, send me a message on Patreon, or a private message on Discord or on Facebook or something. It's nice to have those recommendations, even if I obviously can't get round to reading everything. Life is too short, unfortunately. That's crazy though, Wolf, that you enjoy The Hobbit, but you don't enjoy Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I mean, it's Lord of the Rings is definitely heavier than The Hobbit. The Hobbit is more of a child's story. Um, it's just a little lighter in its format and everything. But the Lord of the Rings, it's absolutely fantastic. I can't praise it enough. And I think my reading of the first book is pretty good. There's stronger points and weaker points, but the second book, I'm very, very proud of it. Like I've said many times now, I think I think I've done a pretty solid job there. So, yeah, give the second book of Lord of the Rings a bash maybe and see what you think. Oh, thanks very much, Lynette. That's lovely to hear. Glad it's helping a little bit, just having a little bit of company in the daytimes, especially with extra strangeness in the world at the moment. There's always strangeness out there, but a little bit extra it feels, of course. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah. Yeah, I was saying recently, or just replying to a comment perhaps, that I've never read any EA Poe, so I'd have to do a little bit of research there. But it has been recommended a few times. Yeah, maybe that would be a good starting point. I'll look it up. I'll look it up tonight and see if there's a good one that I could maybe try on the book club. These live readings are a nice way to experiment. For sure. Yeah, and H.P. Lovecraft is often mentioned as well. Yeah, that's another one that I've looked into a little that I've never read. I sort of know the synopsis of a couple of the stories. But yeah, good recommendations, guys. Appreciate that. Yeah, it can always be a bit like that, Shannon. You like I said before, you can't please everybody, and we all fancy different things on different days, but it could be really nice. I feel like that with 1984 and Animal Farm as well. Mm. Yeah, it's like that sometimes, Wolf. It's just how it goes. Yeah, book ideas and chat. Yeah, it's funny. I don't actually have a dedicated book room. The creative corner on Discord, that was supposed to be, including books and literature, and it became more of a share all your creative things, which was super lovely. But yeah, I could certainly make a different room on Discord just for specific book ideas and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise things get really lost, in the general chat. I tried to keep that general chat room that you pop into when you first join Discord as mainly just Red Fox Voice book chat, but it can be a mix of all sorts of things most of the time. And then Hangout was supposed to be the mix, but it really doesn't matter. And when new people are popping in, and it's natural that the general chat will become a general chat. Thanks so much, Mama Fox. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, everybody, I've already outstayed my welcome a little bit. It's nearly 7 p.m. and I'd hoped to get outside and see some sunshine this afternoon, but it's been another really, really lovely stream, and I hope you've enjoyed spending a few hours with me. It's been really nice from my side anyway. Hope you've enjoyed it. Don't you worry about it. All right, everyone. Until next time, take care. Look after yourself. I'll be back tomorrow. Not sure exactly what time. I'm not sure yet what the best time has been. This seems to have been a decent window, though. Just a little bit earlier than yesterday. Seems like it's been a decent one. What is the sun? I know. Tell me about it. But yeah, maybe a similar time today. Maybe slightly earlier. I wouldn't like to start too much later tomorrow. So either about the same time or a little bit earlier. If you're over on Discord, it's a good place to be if you want to make sure you know when the next stream is coming, or pretty much anyway. As much as anybody can know. Alright. Thanks, everybody. Hey there to I Am as well. I see you in the chat. Take care. Good stuff. I'll look forward to tomorrow as well. Very nice. Cheers, Beata, and the rest of you. Thanks very much, Fox fans. It's been really, really nice. Thanks for your company. Take care now. And until tomorrow, you behave yourselves. I'll have no foxy mischief. Or maybe it's a better idea to get the mischief out of the way and then you come to the book club feeling nice and calm. Well behaved. Okay, everybody. Thanks very much. Read to you soon. Foxy, 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 foxy book club. Take care, everybody. See you tomorrow.